Welcome back. If you're new around here, I'm Justin and I'm building a new coffee and dessert brand from scratch so you can see what really goes on behind the scenes as we go from idea to launch. I want to take you along for the journey on what it takes to build our new business, Doodles Dessert Club. So let's get into it. Now, I'm recording this in early March and we're just starting to see the first few signs of spring. We've got this beautiful pink blossom tree outside the front of our house and we're just starting to see the first few bits of pink that are budding on the tree, which is really nice. For me, those are the first signs that spring is really on the way, and that really gives me a lift. And if you've spent time in the ice cream industry like I have, then you know those first few signs of spring are a little reminder that the good months are ahead. And that feels pretty fitting with where we're at with Doodles. So in episode 4, I announced that we were launching our pre-seed angel fund. And in this episode, I want to talk to you about the process of building our investment materials, including what we've learned, what has surprised us along the way, and what I'd do differently if we were starting over again. Because honestly, it's been one of the most valuable things that I've done throughout this entire process so far. But before we get there, I think it's really worth understanding the journey that got us to where we are today, because the investment materials that we have now are very different to the investment materials that we had when we first started. An investment deck is simply a short visual presentation that can articulate what your business does, what problem it solves, and why you are the best team to pull it off, all without you being present. This is very different to a pitch deck, which is there merely as a visual aid to support you while you present in the room. An investment deck has to be both comprehensive and packed with information, but also concise and to the point. Most importantly, the purpose of an investment deck is to get you a call with the investor. So when we first sat down to build our investment deck, we thought we knew what we were doing. We'd done our research, we understood the business, we'd been working on it for months by that point, and we really had a granular understanding of what we wanted to achieve. We had a really clear vision. So we put together a deck that felt really thorough, really comprehensive, and really told the story of Doodles Dessert Club. It was 21 slides long. We took that deck to our first investor event, really full of confidence, and we quickly realized that we'd got it very wrong. Not wrong in terms of the content that we had included, but wrong in terms of the format that we were presenting it in and the quantity of information that we included in there. 21 slides is far too long for an investment deck. It's too complex and too verbose. It's just too much. A deck must hit on a very specific set of important information. No more, no less. Investors, and particularly angels, are cash rich, but they're time poor. So they see hundreds of decks, and if you can't tell your story clearly, concisely, and really articulate what you do and why you do it, you will lose them. We learned that pretty abruptly. The feedback that we got was we had to get it down from 21 slides down to 10, 12 maximum. Everything else belongs in the investment memorandum, which is a separate supporting document that's a lot more detailed for investors to read through once they've read through the investment deck and have decided, yeah, okay, this is something that I want to learn more about. But the deck is that first taste of your business that a potential investor is going to get. And I guess that we'd been trying to force everything into the deck in one place instead of relying on the fact that that first taster will pique the interest of an investor enough that they will want more information, and then we could send the information memorandum over to them. So here's what we learned about how to structure an investment deck, and specifically how to structure an investment deck aimed at angel investors. So your first slide, your title slide, must be simple with your logo on it and a clear hook to capture the interest of a potential investor so that it piques their interest. So lead with your logo, lead with your strapline, include your SEIS and EIS status on there if you have it. Then your next two slides must explain the product or service that you offer. This is critical because most investment analysts spend no more than 7 minutes looking through your deck, and that's if it's good enough to get past these first 2 or 3 slides. So on these first 2 slides, explain what you do and why you do it. Then the next slide should be your competitor matrix. So this is a visual representation of where you sit in the market relative to your competitors. One rule that we learned very early on when doing this was that your brand must sit in the top right-hand corner of that matrix. And that's important when deciding how to lay out your axes on your matrix. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to manipulate your data, because that's not what we're looking for here. It means that you need to find the axes that genuinely and honestly illustrates your competitive advantage most clearly. So we iterated on ours multiple times before we landed on the right framing, which was an axis of habitual customer frequency versus occasional customer frequency on the x-axis, and coffee-led brands versus dessert-led brands on the y-axis. That matrix tells our story better than a paragraph or an entire page of text ever could. Then comes your team slide. Now, generally speaking, this sits around about slide 5 or 6 in your deck, but for us, we've actually moved it earlier, I think about slide 2 or 3 in ours, because at this stage, while we are pre-revenue, our team and our domain expertise is our biggest asset. We have 95 years of combined experience across franchising, food and beverage, and the hospitality sector. And when you don't yet have revenue, you need to lead with your biggest strength. And our biggest strength is our people and our domain expertise. After that, you've got your problem slide. Now, this must show a genuine problem that anyone can understand and that can ideally be verified through data and statistics. After your problem slide comes your solution slide. Now, this is essentially what your business does. This is how you solve that problem. This is why the world needs what you have to offer. And it should be a compelling insight into why you do what you do. After this, you have your business model and unit economics. Then, and this is really crucial, your traction slide. Now, the term traction means something very specific to investors that's maybe different to how it might be used by the rest of the world. Traction isn't we've bought this piece of equipment, or we've developed this recipe, or we've asked 100 people and 95% of them are interested in our product. Investors would consider that to be closer to market research. To an investor, traction is something that can be backed up with concrete evidence. So this might be an actual purchase order from a potential client, or maybe some previous sales that you already have, but you need to demonstrate traction. Then you've got your ask. This is how much money you're raising, how much equity you are offering, and how you will use the money that you're raising. Then you have your optionality slide. So this is the upside potential of what else the company could become beyond the base case. What are the opportunities that you have to grow the business? And finally, you have your exit. How and when does your investor get their money back, and what is their return on investment? 10 to 12 slides, that's it. Everything else is detail for the information memorandum. One more thing about building your deck is the language that you use. Keep it simple. Imagine you're explaining your business to someone with no expertise in your sector, someone who's never worked in your field or in your industry, because the likelihood is the people that are reading your investment deck have no domain expertise. Because an angel investor might be a very successful entrepreneur or professional in a completely different field to yours. They're smart, but they don't know your world. So don't use acronyms, don't use industry jargon, use language that a toddler could understand. If a toddler couldn't understand what you're saying, simplify it. So here's something that I've noticed after going to our first few investor events. You will get different, often conflicting answers to the same question from different investors every single time. And the maddening thing in all of this is that they're all correct. I've begun taking a few investor calls, and the team and I have been to a few events over the last few months. There was an event in Leyland by a company called Funded. And by the way, who knew that Lancashire was such a hotbed for a startup fundraising in the UK, but it really, really is. There was a couple of events held in Liverpool with the Barclays Eagle Labs and the Liverpool City Region Seed Fund and AXM Venture Capital. Each of these events that I've been to has been genuinely valuable, and I've come away from each of them having learned a great deal. But here's what you have to understand. Every investor will speak to you through the lens of their experience, their expertise, and their interests as an investor. It will also be heavily shaped by the type of investing that they do. So the advice that you get from private equity or venture capital or an angel investor will vary greatly. And what a private equity firm or venture capital fund expect from a pitch is fundamentally different to what an angel investor or a high net worth individual is looking for. Private equity and venture capital investors are typically looking at scale, defensibility, and a very clear path to a large exit. They'll want to see sophisticated financial modeling, clear market sizing, and proof of significant traction before they'll even begin to engage seriously. At the moment, from the feedback that I've had, they are also only generally interested in deep tech, AI, and life sciences, which puts us as a consumer brand outside of their remit. Angels and high net worth individuals, particularly at pre-seed, are often much more relationship driven. They're banking on you as much as they are banking on the business. They want to understand who you are, why you're doing this, and whether they believe that you have the ability to execute. So before you decide whose advice to take, look at it through the lens of who am I targeting, and use the answer to that question to shape the decisions that you make when building your investment materials. We're targeting angel investors, so every decision that we've made about our deck has been filtered through that lens. Building this deck, iterating on it, getting feedback, going back and changing it, and then doing it all over again has taught me more about Doodles Dessert Club than almost anything else that we've done so far. I thought that we had a really strong grasp on what the business was and what we wanted to achieve before we started. And while we did have that grasp, because that was why we began building this business to begin with, it was very high level, it was very surface level. I understood the product, I knew our vision, but I hadn't fully worked through all the mechanics of what we're building and why. Going through this process has really revealed that to me. It forced me and the team to get into the detail, to challenge our assumptions, to stress test the model. And what came out the other side was much sharper, much more coherent, and a much better proposition. One of the most important things I learned was that an investment proposition must start with a problem, because it's much easier to sell a painkiller than a vitamin. Then, once you've defined your problem, you raise money to build a solution to that problem that you've defined. That's the narrative structure that investors expect. But when we started building Doodles Dessert Club, I couldn't really articulate what the problem was that we were solving. I knew we had a great product. I knew that there was an opportunity, but I couldn't frame it as a problem in the way that investors think about these things. But then through this process of iteration and refinement of our investment materials, it's become much clearer. Because it wasn't that we were failing to solve a problem, we just hadn't realized what the problems were or how to put them into words, or the problems were so apparent to us as industry problems that it hadn't occurred to us that not everybody could solve it like we could. So once we found that framing, everything else clicked into place. The story got clearer, the model got stronger, everything became much more refined. So I'll leave you with something that I heard at one of these events that has genuinely stuck with me. Asking for investment gets you guidance, but asking for guidance gets you investment. In my experience, I've only ever built a business in the past through either bootstrapping or debt funding. Now, raising finance through debt is a much simpler proposition because you walk into a bank or you make contact with a lender and the relationship is explicit from the start. You, the bank, have money to invest, and I, as an entrepreneur, have a business model that can service that debt. Here's my financial model, and that's it. It's very transactional. It's very binary. With investors, it's different. If you walk into a room and you're clearly just trying to get someone's money, they can feel that, and it comes across in how you present yourself. If you walk into a room with genuine curiosity, if you're open and honest and asking for help, people respond completely differently. The relationship feels different. The conversation feels different. And often, so I'm told, the investment will follow naturally. Now, I'll be honest, cold outreach and hard sales pitches, they don't really sit that well with me. They just never have. The first stage of raising equity investment is to do a friends and family round, but I'm not comfortable doing that sort of outreach to turn my relationships into something transactional or try and commoditize them. Those relationships that I have mean more to me than raising the capital does, but I will reach out with curiosity if there's something that I can genuinely learn, because I'm a naturally inquisitive person. And through that, I will welcome the opportunity to make introductions with people within the network of my network, because those warm introductions generally get you much more traction than cold outreach ever could. So that's going to be my approach as we prepare to launch our funding round. It's going to be about getting in the right rooms, being open about what we're building, asking for guidance, and learning from every conversation that we have. Because of all the approaches that are available to us, that is the one that sits best with me. So that's episode 5, the journey behind building our investment materials, what we learned, what we got wrong, and what we'd do differently if we started again. In episode 6, I'll talk you through the actual deck that we've built for Doodles Dessert Club, slide by slide. You'll see exactly what we've put together and why, and hopefully it'll give you something useful, whether you're building your own deck or whether you're just curious to see what we're up to at Doodles. If you're finding this series useful, Please subscribe, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I read everything. That said, thank you for watching. Take what works for you, leave the rest, and I'll see you in the next one.